So Godzilla, this is the film that we've been waiting for since that last thing that was there and we don't talk about. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about it. We're not talking about Matthew Broderick, and we're not talking about Madison Square Garden, and we're not talking about a whole bunch of little things running around. We're not talking about eggs. We're not talking about reveals at the end of the movie. There's one egg that doesn't get destroyed. We're not talking about that. We're not going to do it. Sean Reno, why? So Godzilla, starring Bryan Cranston, that's what's been on the casting bill for a long time, and ever since I heard Bryan Cranston was in it, it lended credibility to the notion that this could be a much, much superior film to another film that doesn't exist. But it starts off the movie and we're following him, and he does a phenomenal job in a very short amount of time. He's very believable as this scientist in the situation. He sees these readings and is trying to figure out what they are. And ultimately, it leads to some catastrophe and some tragedy. And it gets to show off his acting chops as well later on in the film. He is brilliant, as many of us suspected that he would be. And he does a phenomenal job in this film. The only problem is that he's not completely in all the scenes throughout the entire film. As much as we think that he might be the main character based on the way that it's billed, he's not. The main character is played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who actually plays his son. The only real problem that I had at all was I just didn't really care as much about Aaron Taylor Johnson's character as I did Bryan Cranston. It didn't connect with me on the same level. He did a fine job, and in being the main character, he had some rather large shoes to fill, and he did a good job, but I wasn't riveted by it. The movie starts off pretty well. It goes through, and a lot of the scenes are believable as to what is going on. There's this catastrophe, and it's kind of a mystery that needs to be solved. And Bryan Cranston, he's the one who's trying to solve it, trying to get to the bottom of it. And meanwhile, all this entire time, you're sitting there kind of knowing what's going to happen. And that's kind of maybe the thing that works against Godzilla most of the time, is that the anticipation of knowing what is going to happen. Any kind of reboot, you're going to have those kinds of problems. But this movie actually used it to its advantage. Because it basically surprised me altogether at the beginning. When we finally do get to the point where the action really starts happening, it does take a little while for that to happen. It's surprising and a direction that I did not expect, and I was pleased by that. And a lot of people's gripes with this film had to do with the fact that they took so long to get to the actual fight, and I can understand that. It did seem like they were teasing you a bit after a while when you finally start getting the glimpses of Godzilla, and here's the start of this epic fight. It's begun, and it's falling all around these people, and yet not a single person on a news network is actually showing you what's going on. You're left to wonder how great this fight is going on around these characters instead of actually seeing it. And that does get drawn out a little bit. But at the same time, when you do actually see those scenes, they are satisfying, and it's done well. They also went back to a lot of the original kind of lore of Godzilla, the things that you kind of expect, and that is that this is a monster fight movie. And they've kind of put Godzilla back into the role of this unlikely kind of good guy in a sense, despite the fact that he's causing all kinds of destruction of Superman proportions. And yet he is really kind of fighting unwittingly on the side of the humans to an extent. So that I liked, getting back to that and just allowing them to go at it. It was very satisfying and enjoyable. There were a few contrivances in the plot where they're trying to push the characters in different directions so that they can get them more involved in what's going on. And that did get a little tiresome at times because I kind of wanted to see the monsters, and there were all these guys kind of trying to get in the middle of it. And after a while, it just seemed like they were reaching a bit. But those scenes were also actually pretty cool. Overall, I enjoyed this film. I do wonder if Bryan Cranston had been the lead throughout, if it might have been a better film. But I thought that Aaron Taylor Johnson does a good job. And you also had Ken Watanabe, and he was very, very good and does his role very well in this film. Overall, a much, much, much better film than that film that never got made. Overall, I liked this film, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. It's worth your time to even go see in the theater. It was good, and there's some good performances, and there were a lot of really satisfying scenes, so especially if you're a fan of Godzilla, you should definitely go and check this out, because I felt like it was a very good time, and even if you're not a Godzilla fan, I think you'll enjoy it. So what did you think? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Is Godzilla too fat? I don't know. Leave a comment. As always, click right here if you like what you see, and subscribe to even more of me.